As usual, I'm opening the Visual Studio. Right. So first I'm opening the folder where I want to put my source code, my working environment. So go to the file, open the folder. At the end of the classes, I'll be sharing this folder. So I'm putting all my code in Satish LWC. So these are all the examples what I'm putting up. So I'll just share this folder at the end of the game. I opened a folder. So I have different files here. Then after opening the source folder, we are trying to create a project. Control Shift P. Control Shift P. Oops. Now open the folder. Then let the editor take its time to set the things. Okay. Open my source file. Select the folder where I want to put my source course. Then I want to create a project. Control Shift P. Create a project. Project name. Let's see. Right. Create a folder. Right. So I have created my project here. Once I created the project, let the file be okay. Right. After creating the project, Control Shift P. Create a lightning web component. Right. LWC example. Destination folder we have given. Right. So go to your Force app, LWC. You are able to see the files. LWS example 3, HTML template, JSON template. Right. So we are trying to example 3. Still we are waiting for the file to be created successfully. Go to the file. Okay. Right, HTML file. Here everything is created in the form of template. So I was giving here lightning card title example. So I have lightning button group, lightning button label, submit. Then we have icon name. I'm making this example to whatever the elements I require to fulfill my requirement. I'm putting all the things here. Lightning button icon. Now here I will go to the icons, try to add some icons here. Lightning component reference. Some utilities I'm taking. We have icons here. I'm adding up some icons here. So let me create. So here I have utility icon, utility colon add. Okay. Go to the lightning button icon. Similarly, we have icon name, then let us take some image. I'll add one by one. Basically I have 6 stages to complete my example. I'm adding up one by one. Okay, so I have some icon, let us say some image. Let us say activity. So like this I have created lightning card, and I have created a couple of buttons here. There is no JavaScript or anything that I have defined. I just created a template without any JavaScript, and I just want to print it. Now here right, once you have done this, I want to push the code. How do you push the code? Control Shift P. First open the default arc. First of all, I need to go to my dev hub. Let me go ahead. Control Shift P. Authorize dev hub. When I say authorize dev hub, it will open my dev hub org. Then it is a web components at the rate of Satish. Salesforce 123. I authorize my dev hub. Once I authorize my dev hub, then I want to log into my scratch arc. If you remember the name, you can enter the name of the scratch arc. If you don't remember, we can create one scratch arc. Okay. Now, Control Shift P, then create default scratch arc. Name of the scratch arc, first one. Choose the name, first one, enter day 7, create. So we are at the scratch arc. Now whatever I have done, I want to push this code into scratch arc. I just logged into the default arc of default scratch arc. Now I want to push whatever the changes or code I have written into my scratch arc. Now before I push, we have few things here. What are the few things that we have? If you remember well, we have a targets which will specify where you want to display. Record home, we have the targets which will specify where you want to display the elements. So we need to make first is exposure equal to true. Then after that we are supposed to tell which arc you want to display, record home page or where you want to display. For that we need to tell targets, lightning app page, lightning record page, lightning home page. Specify this in metadata. Go to the example 3, go to metadata, is exposure equal to true, specify the targets. Right. Now we have created a lightning web component. We designed some elements in the component. Then we specified the metadata. Once we specified the metadata, then what you are supposed to do, Control Shift P, push the source code to default scratch arc. Because already I logged into my scratch arc, I am pushing the code into default scratch arc. Right. Now I want to open the default scratch arc. Control Shift P, open default arc. Once I open the default arc, I will be able to see the component what I created and what I pushed. So go to this arc. Setup. Go to any one of the element. Say leads. Go to the record page. In the record page, edit page, look at the story. LWC example 3. Drag and drop, push the component failed, undefined missing token file or declaration. Okay, check out. Okay, save it, activate. Right, go back to the component. Here we have lightning card title div lightning button group, lightning button icon utility was the issue here. Okay, fine. Let me remove this icon to give you structure. Okay. I made a changes on this. After I made a changes here, again I want to push it. Control Shift P. Push the source to default scratch arc. More okay. Now go to the component. Refresh. So go to the component. Edit. Then we had say activate. Assign to default arc. Next, save. Go back to the component. When you go back to the component, we are able to see example the corresponding buttons we are able to see. Now the same story, how we can create the same story from lightning using the lightning web component. We can go to the lightning web components, look at the story. We are trying to build same example here. Listen carefully. I am trying to build one more example. Right. Control Shift P. Create lightning web component. Now LWC example 4. Choose the directory. I have defined the directory. Once you define, you are going to get component 4, which contains HTML file, JavaScript file, metadata. First HTML file I am taking. Lightning. I have lightning card, title, example. Here I was giving lightning input type. If you don't mention the type, if you don't mention anything, by default it's a text. Label, enter name. So I have given input text. I was taking lightning input type, number, label, enter age, name, age. Lightning input type, date, label, enter DOB. Right. So I have created a couple of components here. Right. Now, how do you create? I create a component. Now, what should I do? Where you want this component to be used? I want this component to be used in certain location. give the target locations where you want this component to be used. So go to metadata, because it's going to be same. I'm just copy pasting the elements, because it's the same element. I'm copy pasting the elements. Right. This is how we given. Save it. Then you want to deploy it. Control Shift P. Push source code to default scratch arc. Failed because of what? Let me check out. Push error.
Spelling of lightning card. Spelling of lightning card is.
Let me check out. NING. Yes. Basically, if it is an error, you get a message like this. Look at the point. Somehow we missed out. Okay. Saved it. Let me push it. Control Shift P. Push to default scratch arc. First, we are creating input components. Then we'll try to see how to refer to the data. Then go to the component. Edit. Lightning Web Component example 4. I'll do one thing. I'll remove this. Okay. I created this component. Save. This is how your input component is created. Enter name, age, enter date of birth, where we have calendar for this. So text, number, and date. We have created this component. The point what we need to understand here is it now we need to understand whatever we have learned in the lightning, is it the same properties that we have for elements, or any changes are there? Let me give you. Go to the lightning. Few things we need to understand here. Go to the lightning button. When you go to the lightning button, how this property is given? It is not in the lower camel. The properties are not in the lower camels. If you look at this, lightning hyphen button, variant, label, title, the story is going to be the same. But look at the point. So whatever we have created, the same properties are applied, but same attributes are used here. Same properties are applied and same attributes are used here. So same concept. So in that case, I want to understand how to use lightning layouts, lightning component layouts, because I'm going to use this in coming example. So I'm going to use lightning layout. So if you go to lightning layout, what we say? Lightning layout followed by lightning layout item. Maximum size is going to be 12. So let us go to the structure. Let us go to the structure and see. So we had lightning layout. Within the lightning layout, we have lightning layout item, padding around small. Now we can give the size. We can define the size what we want. We can define the size what we want. Right. So what I want to do now, right, I'll give these icons. If it is a combination of two words, generally your attributes, if I define a component like this, generally when you are giving a attribute name, we used to give lower camel format. We used to follow lower camel format for defining the attribute names. But while you're calling them, you're supposed to use emp hyphen h. Suppose if the name of the component is my example dot, if you want to refer to them, you're supposed to refer generally how you refer c my example dot, this is how we have to give, and we will give emp name but the lightning it should be c hyphen my hyphen example emp hyphen name. This is the structure. This structure. There's a reason we need to cross check once again what properties we are using, how the properties are referred, what properties are what attributes of the component we are using and how they are referred, what attributes of the component we are using and how they are referred. We need to right. So let us check out this story. Right.
Satish, the employee name Satish, the value also need to be lowercase s.
Yes, Amma. It should be lowercase.
Yes.
Not s. Value is not lowercase.
Oh.
Attributes are in the lowercase.
Okay.
This is why mistake I might have given this. This is how the things are referred. Right. So here also my example you can give it. This is how they are referred. Now look at the story. Now let us go to the item. If you look at this one, you look at this. Lightning L small, layout L small, item I small. But if you go to our lightning web components, lightning components, how we used to give it? We used to follow lower camel format. Look at the story. There was that lightning layout item, I capital. But when you're going for it, lightning layout hyphen item, I also small. You go to navigation item API, or else we can list view or input address. Go to the lightning components here. Lightning web components. If you go to lightning web components, look at this input hyphen address, input hyphen field, no caps. We don't follow. It is called Kurban format. Kurban format. Some Kurban format we are going to call. Pronunciation may be slightly different, but this is every word separated by hyphen and it's going to start with lower camel. This is a format in which we are going to define. Right, Amma? So here I want to convey the same. So once again, let me go with this one. So I have created this lightning component. What is the previous example I have done? I have done LWS example 3. So I am giving here C hyphen LWS example 3. So I'm including LWS. It's not hyphen this one. LWS example. Which I have used the underscores, right? Okay. Oops. Okay. CF1 C colon LWS right, because I have used underscore there. So let me push it. Control Shift P, push to default arg. Push failed because of the naming compilation. Push failed because of the naming compilation. So there's an issue with the naming. So what I can do, in place of LWS underscore, how this can be separated underscore. Underscore should be defined in the same way actually. Okay. Because there's an underscore, there's an issue with that. Let me take another component without underscore. If it's underscore, how to push it? Let me cross check it. But let me try this way. There's an issue with that. Let me check if underscore is there, how to define it. There's an issue with this. Okay. Now, let me define one more example here. If there's underscore, how to replicate? I have not gone through this. Let me cross check. Okay. Control Shift P. Create a Lightning Web component. Example. Right. So let me go to the example. In the example metadata, I'm saying where this can be used. Just push it. Let us go to the example 4. And I have given an example. Let me push it. So more than the code, these things have become right. Then I want to write some code in this example 4. This example component. Then go to 4. The 4 I'm giving this C-hyphen example. Then Control Shift P, push to source arc. I'm just trying to show you I'm just using another component, one Lightning Web component within another Lightning Web component. One Lightning Web component within the another Lightning Web component. So go back to your component, refresh. If there's underscore, what is the naming convention? I just not gone through it. Let me check and update you on the same. This is the example component. So one Lightning Web component can be used in another Lightning Web component, provided the naming should be with C-example-1, C-example-2. So let me create Control Shift P, create Lightning Web component, example. Example 2. Right. So I have metadata. Same story on the metadata. I just want to copy paste it. So one Lightning Web component used in another Lightning Web component. Then the same I'm including in this C example. Okay, let me push it. Control Shift P, push the source to default scratch arc. Then, so if it is a combination of two words, they should be separated by hyphen. Go back to the story, refresh it. So one lightning web component invoked in another lightning web component. This is example 2. This is how we are including. We are including one lightning web component in another. Generally, in the lightning we used to say C colon component name, but here we are saying C hyphen component name. If you had say component name, if the component name is a combination of 2 or 3 words, then they should be separated with hyphens. So this is how we are creating. Okay. Now the point here is there any way we can apply CSS? If you look at this, when I'm creating a lightning web component, we're only getting HTML file, JavaScript file, and we're getting a metadata file. There is no CSS file that is invoked. So let us apply some CSS on the components. Let us create a lightning web components and create a CSS for the lightning web component. Let me create some examples here. Now I'm creating Ctrl+Shift+P, create a lightning web component, LWC example. We're done. Fine. Right. Let me create a component. Example 5. In the example 5, I am applying. So I have div. So basically, what we do: inline CSS, internal CSS, and import external CSS. Here I'm going to apply here. Within the element I'm giving style, background. This is for a component. Now same if you want to apply right. Now I want to apply. When you go to the lightning, in the lightning what we used to have? We used to have a Java controller, style, design. Okay, then we have helper, all those stuff we used to have. But in the lightning component, lightning web component, we had only HTML, JavaScript, and JS. Then what I can do, give a right click. Then we had a new file. Add a new file. Give the name of the file, LWC example 5.css. So create a file. Give a right click on the whichever the lightning web component you created. Select the lightning web component. Give a right click and click on new file. Give the same name of the lightning web component and give extension as .css. So here I am giving first box. I am putting some CSS here. I was putting some color. We are applying some CSS. Now I applied a CSS. Now go to the HTML. Then I'm giving it class. Right. Class we have first box. We had a story again here. First box. Okay. Then so we have created a component. Go to the metadata. So in the metadata, just copy paste the same story. is exposure equal to true, targets the location where you want to display this component. Done. Then let us push the code. How do you push the code? Control Shift P. Push the code to default scratch arc. Then go to the component, edit the page. So we are applying some CSS. Here we don't get default CSS file. We're supposed to add the CSS file from our end. Right. So by default, the CSS file will not be generated. We are supposed to add our own CSS file into the component. Right. So we are adding the Lightning components. We are calling the Lightning web components within a web component, applying some CSS on the component. Good. Now, the next story what I have is, I want to create the controller for it. In the Lightning components, what we had, we got a built-in JavaScript, controller, helper, styles. Here we have HTML and JS. Whatever the JS I want to do, I want to create here. Now, when you are creating a JavaScript, on click, perform some action. So let me give you a component which will invoke a JavaScript. I want to create a JavaScript action for the Lightning web component. So go to the story, Control Shift P, create a Lightning web component, enter 6. Right. Now go to the example number 6. Still the files are not created. Okay. Before the file was created, let me apply the changes on the component 5 itself. So here I have on click, call me. Now we got here. Now there is a bug here. Label, Lightning button label. What was that issue here? Okay. Select the component. Now
Hi, Satish. It's on click near colon. That's exclamatory mark.
no, it's not because of this. The issue is because of
Lightning button.
Lightning
Button you have given. Yeah. Colon you have given.
Yeah, this way is the
It
mistake.
will be that.
Yes, sir. So we have to shift the things from right. We have created this. Now, what I was supposed to do, go to the Lightning JavaScript. Here I was supposed to give. What is the action you gave here? Action is call me. So define call me. Then I can give console.log. Console.log. We are printing the story here. So go for this, then push it, Control Shift P, push the source code. So go back to the component here and refresh. This is how we got it. Click on it, inspect console. This is testing for JavaScript, right? We are invoking a JavaScript. But while invoking a JavaScript, what I need, we are invoking a JavaScript, very good. But when you are invoking a JavaScript, I also want to transfer the data. I want to communicate. I want to communicate regarding the data. I want to transfer the data, or I want to fetch the data. So if you want to fetch the data or transfer the data, we have some properties here. So look at the story. JavaScript properties. In the JavaScript properties, we have private properties, we have reactive properties, we have public properties, right? We have getter methods, we have setter methods. So this type of information is there. So let us understand how you create these attributes, how you use these attributes. So we want to understand what is a reactive variables, what are reactive attributes, what are non-reactive attributes, what are public attributes, what are trackable attributes. So to understand this, let us do a quick example. So look at the story. Again, the same story. Control Shift P. Create a Lightning Web component. Okay. So here I have, generally what I'm doing, generally I'm giving here Satish. Now, this is the data I want to print. Just let me take the static data and print it first. Let's take a static data and print it. Now, if you want this data to be available, first let us take a static data and print it. Let me push this data, then we make it as a dynamic. So I'm going with the Control Shift P, push the source code to default scratch arc. Okay. Go back to the story. Right. So this is how the Lightning component is created. Now what I don't want to give a static data like this. I don't want to give a static data. I want to make it dynamic. If you want to make it dynamic, what I was doing, go to the JavaScript. This is how we got it. So whatever the logic you want to define, that should be defined within the class. Whatever the logic you want to define, that should be defined within the class. Here I have defined the variables name, defined. I have defined a variable name, age, city. I defined a variable called name, age, city. Then push the data to default scratch arc. I have taken a couple of variables and I am trying to use it. So these variables which you define like this, they're called as private variables. The variables which are defined like this, name, age, city, they are called private variables. Now go back to the story, refresh it. Sorry, I was supposed to use the attribute, right? Okay. Now the attributes are there. These attributes, what I was supposed to do, I was supposed to use it in the Lightning template. How you refer to them? So generally in the Lightning, we say C-rod attribute name, or in the Visual Force, we say hyphen variable name, right? Similarly, in the Lightning Web Components expression, straight away we give it. This is how we are going to refer to the attributes which are defined in the scripting. The attributes which are defined in the scripting, this is how we are going to use it.
Okay, so Satish, when you specified private, is that to the file or is that to the entire class which composes of all three different files?
See, this is the scripting. Now, this key file is one is a HTML template, other one is associated scripting, third one is a metadata. Got it? Now it is the properties which are dealing here, the properties which are defined here. Okay, allow me to complete. I'll tell you the basic difference here. Once I complete a quick action of one button action, you'll know why I call it as a private. Just give me one.
Okay.
Push it to scratch arc. Okay. Go back to the story, refresh it. So this is how the data is given, right? Now, why I was calling as a private, you'll understand from now. Look at the point. I have taken a HTML, Lightning, button, label, submit. On click, call. JavaScript I have defined. When you click on the button, JavaScript is called. I went to the JavaScript. Please call me this dot name equal to Vikram. This dot age equal to 90. This dot city equal to. I modified the data, right? When you call me, I modify the data. Now I'm going to give console.log this dot name. This dot city. Right. Now, when I click on the button, what is happening? The entire file. When I click on the button, that data I was modifying, name, age, city, I'm modifying. Right. Now, go to Control-Shift-P, push to the source code. Okay. Go to the source arc, refresh it. I clicked on the button. When I clicked on the button, is the data changed here? I clicked on the button, data is not changed.
No.
But when you go to console, cross check, Vikram Reddy 90 Hyderabad. So what is happening? The changes what I make on this attribute, they will not be reflected or conveyed to the HTML again. The changes which I made on these variables, the changes what I made on these variables, they will not be rendered to the HTML. Now, whatever the initial values what we have defined, they will go
Okay.
to the template. But later on, based on your user interaction, okay, if you perform any changes on the private variables, if you make any changes on the private data, that will not be reflected back to the pages. Is that was clear? Right.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, this is also called as non-reactive variables. We also call them as non-reactive variables. We also call them as non-reactive variables, right? So I hope everyone has followed this. I hope everyone has followed this. Right. Okay. Is that was clear for everyone? Any queries from anyone else? Any query from anyone else? Okay. Chalo. Now let me go to the next point. The next point what I have is now you have taken a variable very good. What if you have an array? What if you have object? How you define an object? How you define object? How you define arrays? So let us try to take some variables which will represent arrays, which will represent objects. Then I'll go to the next part of the story. Still we are working with the private variables only. Private variables are also called non-reactive variables. Any changes that you make on this variable, they will not be rendered to the HTML. That's why they're called non-reactive variables. They're not tracked, untracked variables. Private variables are non-reactive variables or untracked variables. Okay, let us move on to the next story. Let's move on to the next story here. So I was creating Control Shift P, create a Lightning Web component. Okay. First, I'll start with the JavaScript. Well, sorry. Here I gave cities. This is my data. Now, the question here is generally, if you want to display the data in the Lightning, we used to use URI iteration items equal to the variable names list var equal to a. This is how we used to define it. If you go to the Visual Force, we used to use apex page block table or data table. This is how we used to represent the array of elements. Now, how do you display array of elements in the Lightning Web Components? If it is a array of elements in the Lightning, we used to use a data table for data, or if you have a wrapper class, we used to use a data table. Now, if it is a primitive elements or any other data, we used to use URI iteration. Okay. Then, if it is a Visual Force page, we have data table. We have a data table, page block table, data list, this type of topics. In the Lightning, array example. Let's move on to the story. So here, if it is array template, we should give template. The template for each. For each, what is the variable we have? The variable name is cities. Then again, we have for item, we have this is how we used to define it. Let me make it simple. So look at the story. Template. What is making this error here? Okay. Then we have for each for item then I want to print the data. This is how we are trying to print it. But the problem is whenever you are going for a loop, we have to ensure that the starting value is unique. So we have to specify like a key. It is a must that we need to define the value unique. So we have to define a key. So whatever the item we are taking, the same item I am giving as a key. Template for each list of elements. For item variable we are defining. That variable we are using. Template for each area of elements. Template for each area of elements for item. Now what I want to do, I want to define the visibility of the data. Go to metadata again. This is the same story, so I don't want to type it again. Just copy pasting it. Okay. Now let us push it out. Go back. We got a array of elements here. So we got the array of elements. This is one of the way in displaying the data for each, for item, for each and for item, for each and for item. Here we also have different structure. The other structure what I have is a template, iterator, so I have here P, key, item dot value, item dot value. So let us see the output. I'll explain the story. Control Shift P. Push the other format of displaying the data. This is how we got it. So what was this? Iteration. Iterator. This is the variable. Iterator. Here I gave cities. They are referred with A. Here we gave iteration item. Cities are referred with a variable called item. Item is each value. Now item dot value. We cannot give straight away A like this. Here it is like both are conveying the same. Here we are saying list is cities. Where is A? In the bottom one, in the below one, list is cities. Variable is items. Iterator, whatever the variable name we are giving, with that we will be referring one by one element. So both of them are used to refer to the list of elements one by one. When you have an area of elements or a group of elements, if you want to display These are the two types of iterations we have to display the data. Is that was clear for everyone? Any other queries?
Okay, Satish, it says key, I mean list allows duplicate values, so it's just name. Keyword is key, but it's really not unique.
Only initial value is required for
The
us.
line number 3.
Yeah, initial value should be unique, Kumar.
Okay.
We are just interested on only
Okay.
initial value. Only initial value we are interested. Right. So let me go to the next story. Okay. Now let me go to the next. What if you want to display an object? If you have an object, how you display the object and how you print the data? Now we have taken a variable. All these variables what I have defined right now, all of them are private variables, are okay, non-reactive, okay, non-reactive variables. What if you want to go for object? If you want to create an object, how you define an object and how you are going to take it? Let us say student. I have defined. I define an object, a name, Satish, age 45. Now the same data I want to refer here. So I have a object here. Object is always represented in the form of key value pair. So I'm giving the variable name is student. So I have got student.name, student.age. Push the data. Run the form. This is how we got name Satish and age 34. So here the basics are very important for you because it is not going to be a scripting format. It is not a pure scripting. It is not a pure Apex programming. It is going to be, it has its own structures. So we are supposed to understand the basics very clearly to get into the story. So this is how we are referring the data. So just all of you try to implement this exercise. All of you try to implement this exercise, everyone. So create array of objects. And display the value in the lightning component. All of you try this example. Create array of student objects. In each student object we have, you can say students. Create array of objects. Create array of student object. And print those values in the lightning web components. Try this example, everyone. From your end, try out this example. Looking at, try to create the component. Let me close the Explorer. Close the editor. Yeah. Control Shift P. create a lightning web component. So go to this component. Here I was trying to give lightning input type text label enter. Here I have given on change call. So whenever there is a change in the value, I'm invoking a call me. Here I was trying to give div. I'll give some style here. Yo. Name, the basic quick example. Here I want to add some CSS file. So right click on the component, give a new file. So LWC example 9.css. So dot box. Right. I give some basic CSS. Now go to the JavaScript. I want to give a property. What is the property we have given? Name. Name I have given. Now name is Ravi Kumar. This is a non-trackable property. This is a non-trackable property. Any change that happens on this will not be conveyed to the template. If you want to make this property as a trackable, we have to give at the rate of track. When I say at the rate of track, the variable will be a trackable. It's called reactive variable. Reactive variable means any change occurs on this, template will be re-rendered. Any change that occurs on this data, the template will be re-rendered, which is called trackable. So if you want to track the variable, we need to import track here. So we have to write track, import the track, import the lightning element comma track, then we can define at the rate of track. Then I have call me. Call me. When you give a call me, I want to refer to the element. Call me event. Then how do you refer to this? This dot, first I'll refer to the event. Event dot target dot value. Event dot target dot value. This will refer to event dot on which element the event has occurred. On which element the event has occurred, that element event dot target. Target element on which the event occurred. Dot value referring to the value. We give this dot name equal to event dot target dot value. So the element on which the event occurred, get the value from that element, assign that value to name. So when was the JavaScript getting called? Whenever the value in the input text is getting modified. Whenever value in the input text is getting modified, this event is fired. When the event is fired, getting the data from the event, assigning that value to the trackable element name. This dot name equal to event dot target dot value. As I will also give my name. My name equal to, okay, let me finish this. Right. Then go to metadata. Just copy paste the metadata. Right. So then push the element, Control Shift P. Go on to the story. So refresh the element, edit the page. Right. Here I was taking right. I think we are not okay. So go back to the story. Lightning input div on change. Okay. 9G input type text label on change call me. Okay. So go back to the component, save it. Back to the story. So where was our component? It's not added here. Okay. The component was added here. Save. Back. Oops. For some reason it is not getting displayed. Let me cross check what happened with this component. So we had metadata, expose true, app page, record page, home page, hello, yes, template, lightning, input, type, text, label, enter name, on change. On change, call me. So let me push it. Control Shift P.
Satish, you have some extra character after name is equal to name P.
Yeah, you're right. That was added right now. It's not a clear one. Refresh. Right. So I think we gave box, very small box, unable to track the changes also. So I'll give width. Okay. Let me push again. Go back to our story, refresh the element. Okay. Now I'm giving here Kiran Kumar. Now, whenever I'm making the change here, the data is getting printed there. So, trackable. Whenever the change occurs, the data is read by the track, that property what I given, and the changes which are made, they are reflected here. Now, these are called trackable properties. These are called trackable properties. These are called trackable properties. These are the trackable properties because I gave at the rate of track. So any change is happening. If you the value what you entered that was assigned to the name, because I assigned to the name, that value we are able to update to this .name. Any value that you entered in the input text box that is assigned to name, we are able to see the changes because the variable is a trackable variable. The same variable, if I take one more variable, I'm going to take my city, Hyderabad. Okay, I'll take a next example to understand the context. So let us move to the next example. I will take one trackable variable. Try to get the story. Once again, I'll try to push the similar type of example. Control Shift P. Lightning Web Component. Now move on to the example 10. First, let me create some template. God. I was giving lightning input type equal to number, label, enter a value, name equal to on change, call. The a value changes, call me. So you have taken a component. Whenever the a value modify, inform. Similarly, we have the next component here. Enter b value. Right. Then I have a context here. Lightning button, label, add. On click. Then
So Satish, for the second variable b value, name is equal to a value you have specified.
okay. Then we want to print the data. So this is the story what I created. So I got a value, b value, and I have a button. When I click on the button, this is what we want to perform. Let me design the CSS. Let me design the variables. I want the variables to be tracked, so I'm giving here track. So I want to take some properties here. Track. Then I want to take few variables, a value, or else I can take number 1, number 2. Okay. Then I have call me. So call me event. When this call me is called, Whenever the a value changes or b value changes, call me is invoked. Whenever the a value is changed, whenever the b value is changed, the call me is invoked. First, I want to know constant name event dot target dot name. This will give you name of the element on which event occurred. When I say dot value, we get the value. But here I want the name of the element on which the event occurred. If event name equal to a value, so if the event occurred on the a value, then this dot number equal to this dot number 1 equal to parse int of event dot target dot event dot target dot value, or else you can just say event dot target dot value. Else this dot number 2 equal to event dot target dot value. So if the event occurred on a value, read the value and set it in number 1. If the event occurred in b value, set the value to the number 2. Right. Then we had another functionality. What is the other functionality we had? Show. Show function. The show functionality, constant a value equal to parse int this dot number 1, because we are taking from the input components that will be converted into b value equal to parse int this dot number 2. Because we are taking from HTML elements, the values will be taken as right. Okay. Parse this dot number 1, this dot number 2. Okay. Then I want to keep this dot result value equal to sum of a value plus b value this is how we are keeping it. Now when the a value is modified, reading the a value, setting to the number 1. When b value is modified, setting the value to, if a value is modified, read the value and set it to number 2. As value read from HTML always be in string format, we are converting into integer. This is the story.
At line number 20, it should be this dot number 2.
this dot number 2. You are right. Okay. So this is how we have given. Then what we are supposed to do? Set the metadata. So track. Once you give the property as a track, any change occurs on that property, the template will be rendered. When you don't give a track, the changes occur on that property will not re-render the template. That's only the difference. I hope you got the difference between
But
track and private. Here, the changes occurring on number 1, number 2. Please mute your mic, Emma. The changes occurring on number 1, number 2, that will not be reflected back to the template because we are not going to print those values in the template. We are only using for internal purpose. Okay. Control Shift P. Create Lightning Web Component. Sorry. Control Shift P. Push to default Scratch org. Right. So go back to the component. This is how we are getting. Sum of A value 10 and B value 10 is 20. Right? Reading the value, performing the operation. Is that was clear for everyone? Is that was clear for everyone? Look at the code.
okay, sir.
If anyone has any query, let me know, Amma.
Okay, so Satish here, since number 1, number 2 are defined as private, so they are not tracked. So we did not see in the first example. So, but here internally we are moving them to the attribute A name and B name, which are available all the time on change also. So the values
No.
that are modified are available.
Look at that. You got a wrong context. These variables, what I defined here, they can be used anywhere within the JavaScript. Okay. The variables which I'm using here, those variables can be used anywhere within the JavaScript. But when I modify the values of these variables, they will not be reflected back in the template. Then when I give a variable like this number 1, number 2, the variables can be used anywhere within the page. Within the JavaScript, anywhere we can use. Anywhere we can use within the JavaScript. But the changes what I made will not be reflected back to the template. Got the story? When I say track, this variable can be used anywhere within the JavaScript. If I make any change on the variable, it will be reflected back on the template also.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Any other queries from anyone else? Any other queries from anyone else? Any other queries? No queries?
Okay, I think, sorry. Okay, so Satish, could be last question. So I think in the show method, you define A-val and B-val. And also in the HTML, you have named the variables A-val and B-val. So there is no conflict, and is that A-val, B-val is not coming from the HTML, right?
No. This is a variable, right?
In the HTML, you have defined
Okay, local variables, right?
yes. In the HTML also, you have defined Lightning in input variables A-val and B-val. Name is equal to.
They are names, right? They are names of the variables. Here I'm taking variables here. These are the names of the elements. The names of the elements are used in this.
Okay, I got confused with
target dot event dot target dot value. This event dot target dot name. Here we get
okay.
the name of the element.
Okay, thank you. I got confused.
Right. Anyone else has any other queries? Okay. Now, So these variables are called trackable properties. These are called private properties. I hope this story is clear for you. Right. Then there are some variables which are also called public properties. Now, apart from what we learned, still there is a concept of public properties, getter methods. Now, how to set the getter methods, how to set the public variables and other components, other concepts are there. So before I move on, I'll just try to include a quick example. So are you interested to do one more example from your end, or should I move on to the next concept? If people are interested to do an example of similar type, we can do it. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next concept. Yes or no? Okay. Fine. Let me take it to the next concept. Here, we also need to understand the other properties what we have here. Here, if you look at the properties here, we need to understand some. Okay, this is what we discussed: private properties and reactive properties. Private and reactive properties you are done, but still we have a concept called. How come this is moving? Public properties. Now, what is this public property? If it's a reactive properties, trackable properties, we are giving at the rate of API. If I give, if you want to give a trackable properties, we give at the rate of track. Similarly, if you want to take any public properties, we define it as API, at the rate of API. The annotation at the rate of API. But the point here is, when I go to the public properties, let me give you. The property is something like this. I have a parent component. For the parent component, I have scripting. In the scripting, I have defined at the rate of API, name equal to. Right. Now, this is the parent component and they have the value. The issue here is the parent component cannot modify this value. Only the child component can specify it. Child component will give property name. The child component only can say. Parent will set only default value. Parent will set, okay, child can set their custom values. Look at the story to make it clear. First, I'll try to show the existing code. Then I'll try to move on to the next one. So here we have a component called to do item. Here we have a component called to do item. This component has a JavaScript. To do item, this component has a JavaScript. So this is one component, it has an attribute. Now we have a parent component here. Let us go to the parent component. To do apps. What is our component we created? To do item. We have an application called to do app. To do app is a parent component. This parent component will not be able to modify the value of this API. The parent component cannot modify. Now, this component can be defined as a child component of another. At the time of defining a child component, they can specify the value. In simple, what I can tell you is, in the lightning component, when you are using a lightning component, look at the story. So, I have your component. child component. Yura. Then I'm defining a parent component here. G dot. The same story. Whatever I'm doing here, the same thing is going to happen with the at the rate of API. There's no difference here. So whatever the output we are going to get here, the same thing is going to be done with API. Define a component, and the component has an attribute. Now the value of this attribute cannot be set by parent component. The child component can assign whatever at the time of invoking a child component, whatever the value we set it, that value will be printed. If you don't assign the value, we have a default value, right? If you don't set the value, the default value will be printed, right? So we have created a child component, invoking the child component within the parent component. At the time of invoking a child component, we are passing the values of attributes. Child component has an attribute. At the time of invoking a child component, we are passing the value of an attribute. Whatever the value we are passing, that value will be printed. The same story we are going to run. The same story we are going to run in the Lightning Web components with the help of at the rate of API. When I say at the rate of API, it is a public property. When I say at the rate of API, it is called public property. Is that was clear for everyone? Conceptually, are you clear with this? Right. Is that was clear, boss? Conceptually, are you clear about this? So whatever we are doing, defined a child component.
Yes.
The component has an attribute. Whenever we are invoking a child component in another component, we will pass the value. The same story in the Lightning Web components, we are doing the same story. Now look at the example. What is defined here? You understand it. Now what is the child component here? To do item. It has a property called at the rate of API item name equal to new item. It's a default value. Then here I am printing item name. Okay. Now there is another component, another template. The template I am saying, say to do item name equal to milk. Whatever the value we are giving, that value will be printed now. That value will be printed here. Right. So let me try one example from your end. Let me try one example to demonstrate this. The underscore I have to avoid. I'm not sure about the pattern. I'll take parent. Now I have a JavaScript. I need to give at the rate of API. Sadish. Okay. Now I want to create one parent component. Let me make metadata available. Child 1. Let me move on to the child 1. It was that. Then create one more component. Or else I can use them in Lightning Web Component 11. C hyphen child hyphen 1. Then your name. This is how I create. Now let me put up the metadata and push the data. So 11 metadata. Right. So let me deploy the components. I'm deploying them to Scratch Arcs. Then go to the test environment, check out the existing functionalities. See it. Oops, there's some bug in my code. Let me cross check. Child 1 component. I'm not given a floor bracket here. I'm not given a floor bracket. There's a bug. Let me push the code once again. Okay. So we got here testing 1, Ravi Kiran, Roshan Kiri. Right, boss? So this is the purpose of API. That API annotation at the rate of API annotation. Annotation API is used. Annotation followed by API is used to define the public properties. Right. In the web methods, at the rate of API is used to define public properties. At the rate of track is to define trackable properties. Private properties, without any annotation, there will be private properties. So I hope everyone is good with this concept, Amma. Everyone is good with this concept? Now.
Okay, so Satish, does API is always trackable or is private? Like, if I make any changes, is
Now,
that
it is
reflected back like as track?
Now the point is that when you say API, you can set the value. The component we are setting the value of an attribute. It's like an attribute. It's an attribute. Now, if you pass the value, see, was simple example. I give this. Now, instead of giving this, if the parent component has any attribute like this, it can pass no.
Okay, thank you.
But here, whatever the value we define, that value will come. That's all. Okay.
Okay, I understood. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. So I hope this is the basics. So tomorrow, shall we have a class in the evening hours?